father a candle.
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful saying in the book of Proverbs that teaches us that the candle of man, the candle of God, Ner Elohim, Nishmat Adam, is the soul of man. There's this comparison from the spiritual and the physical realm that a candle represents a soul. So when we light a physical candle and connect it to a soul, we elevate a soul. So we do that on a Yurtzeit. We light a candle, we're almost like bringing a little bit of the soul back to us, or we're connecting maybe up high a little bit. There's this physical connection in this world, but the candle of God is the soul of man, a very, very deep understanding. But we've spoken about how the Jewish people were kind of pyromaniacs. Like we really are. We're obsessed with fire. Because every Jewish holiday and festival starts with fire, ends with fire, right? We're kind of Havdalah and Shabbos candles and holidays and Hanukkah candles, and in the shul, where some people are working at getting a eternal flame. Every synagogue is supposed to always have a light burning, right? I know that that's a project that's in the works, right?
We lit, like we didn't want to burn each other. Remember, like all that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that's a great thing to speak about, because that's not so much in the Ashkenazi world, but when we stepped into the Moroccan Sephardic culture, everything is candles. You go into a gravesite, they sell you candles, and there's so many candles.
You almost burn yourself, put your hand in there, like
right? The difference between, let's say, visiting a cemetery in an regular Ashkenazi cemetery is you would put a rock on a gravestone, and in a Sephardic culture, you will put a candle. You're going to light a candle for the souls. That's a very big difference that we saw there, right? Yes.
So the man that's sort of celebrating,
Yeah.
Shimon Bar Yochai,
Yes.
his Zohar, they called it something of radiance.
Okay, good. So what am I getting at? I'm going to touch upon that because no one knows who that dude is. So let's bring him in. Okay, so on this day, so a lot of amazing things happened. A plague ended. So 24,000 scholars died. And then on this day, the 33rd day, no more death. Everyone got up, no more illness. It was like it's like COVID was over. It was a terrible plague for the Jewish people that lasted a long time. And there was no end in sight. And all of a sudden, could you imagine? I mean, we're burying dozens and dozens of people every day. And it was a plague that was brought upon because of our actions, because we were not good to each other. We were fighting between and amongst each other, being Adam lachavero, man and his fellow. We just were not good to each other. And there was a terrible plague that, what?
Kind of like today.
Kind of like today, but I mean, we know that the ultimate healing that we're waiting for in the Jewish world and really beyond in the world is for us to live in peace and harmony. And when we get there, our sages tell us that the third holy temple will be rebuilt and we will have such a better time, like worldwide. No more illness, no more, like just like, all of the hopes and dreams that everyone carries for themselves and for the future is like, that will only happen when we get our stuff together with our relationships. So it's all about relationships. More than half the Torah is about relationships. This whole course we've been doing is about relationships, interpersonal relationships. So going back to what you were saying, which really hits it, because yes, there was that plague. Yes, we had celebration, but more than that, on this day, the mystical teachings of the Zohar, which is Kabbalah, were written down. So if they were not written down, it would have been lost. But when it was written down, there was a light that came into the world. And that's why we honor it by lighting fires. Because it's the fire of Torah, that's what it represents. We dance around the fires. The fires represent, it's the passion of Judaism. And if anyone has been to the beautiful building in Jerusalem, Eish HaTorah, so when you walk in, I mean, it's a gorgeous building. And right there, have you ever seen a Chihuly sculpture, like this gorgeous glass sculpture? So what does Eish mean? Fire. So Eish HaTorah, the fire of Torah. So what that structure is water and fire. There's the blue and the red and the orange and the yellows, and like it's the fire, right? Which is the fire of Torah. And the blue is the water that represents the sage, Rabbi Akiva. That's also very much tied into this whole holiday. The sage who sat by a stream at 40 years old, and he was thinking about his life and about moving forward. There was this incredible woman who was willing to risk everything and marry him and build him up as a Torah scholar. But he's thinking to himself, I don't even know the ABCs of Judaism. He didn't even know the Aleph Beis. This woman is saying, if you dedicate your life to Torah, I will marry you, I will build you up, I will sacrifice. Because her father, the Kalba Savua, he was called, he was like the wealthiest man and the mayor of the town. He told his daughter that if she marries this pauper, he will throw her out. She will never see another cent from him. And she's willing to risk it. Do you guys know the story? It's a beautiful love story. Did he tell you last week? Okay, so I don't need to tell it again, unless there are some people that weren't here. Should I just finish it real quick? Okay, real quick. So she basically sacrifices so much for this man. He marries her. The water from that beautiful Chihuly sculpture represents him sitting by the stream and watching the water drip after drip after drip. And he notices that the rock formation has a hole in it. And he says to himself, if something as soft as a drop of water could penetrate stone, then maybe the drops of the Torah could penetrate my heart, which feels like stone to me. But maybe slowly, with a little bit more and just a little baby step at a time, maybe I could also become a changed person. So that water really inspired him, and he goes for it, and he becomes the greatest sage. He's the one that has the 24,000 students. Unfortunately, very sad ending, they all die. And he starts again. This is also a very powerful part of the story. After all 24,000 of his students perished because of a plague and because they were not good to each other, it wasn't like they weren't observant. They were God-fearing. They were doing all the right things, all the mitzvot, but they weren't getting along man between man. And that's the most devastating thing, because that is the whole Torah. That is Judaism. That is our value system. And they were learning it. They were like walking the walk, but they weren't talking the talk, or they were talking the talk, but not walking the walk. It wasn't a part of them. They didn't get the message. So
Is that sinas?
yeah, baseless hatred. Yeah, which is really the root of all destruction in the world. So end of story, because it's a very long, beautiful story, but the end of the story, and for me, the most powerful part is that Rabbi Akiva, after he is so devastated with the loss, he doesn't have one student. He collects 5 students, 5 new people, and he starts again. And he keeps on going, which really brings us into this week's chapter that we're going to be learning. So, if you have a book, you can open it. We are making our way through this. We're going to be talking about renewal, okay, starting again. So I'm going to start with a personal story. Hi, Amy. Personal story. Okay, this just happened, fresh off the boat. I just got back from Israel, and I had this great opportunity to, try. As much as you can. You're not in control of everything that happens to you. So some things work well, some things don't. We all make mistakes because we're not angels. We're just human beings. And I had this great opportunity to inspire 150 women for 8 days. I could literally maybe inspire them to change their lives for the better. For many of you here, you've been touched by this immersive experience going to Israel. So here I am on the stage. Do you think that's a little scary? Very, very, especially if all you want is to say the right thing that could open their heart. So every word that comes out of your mouth can either bring them closer or push them further away. And really, with everything, there's nothing in between. So on the first night of the trip, I made a huge mistake. And I didn't know about it until the 3rd day of the trip. But on the 3rd day of the trip, I went into the breakfast. I heard that there was a group that was very, very unhappy. It was this group. They were from Baltimore. It was their first time on this trip. They had never been there before. First time leader. She was amazing, with 10 ladies. And she told me, my ladies are so unhappy. They're so unhappy. So I woke up really early. I said, let's meet, let's talk, let's see, let me meet the ladies. Let's see what the story is. I had no idea. So I come into the dining hall, get my breakfast, and I find this group. And I said, do you guys mind if I sit down next to you? So I sat down, and half the group got up and walked away.
Oh.
Oh, wow, this is bad. So I, I know. So I'm like, wow, this is really bad. But what's going on? Because I really didn't know. But I felt, oh, what, just like even more, like you could just imagine the emotions, because I want so badly to give everyone this gift. It's an opportunity for every single individual. Like, it's not like 150, it's like one life and one world and another world and another world. And these are all Jewish mothers that if they have a positive experience, they're going to go home and bring it to their families. Like, this is like generations, like one experience for one woman, it's an entire world and it could change. So I'm feeling like the heat. And thank God, the leader, her name was Heather. She's this lovely lady, like she had like the coolest tattoos all over her. But she was great. She was the greatest gift to me. She said, I want to tell you why they're so upset. And she shared with me that on the first night of the trip, I shared a story that made them feel that I was not genuine and I was not authentic. And it was basically a story that I went through, but I switched the details around to make it more inspiring to them. And it was a story that one of them had read. So although it was very much my story, it was very much something that I went through, I changed the details and I didn't know that it was like, there was another story flying around out there and they were sure, like they said, we cannot listen to another word this woman says. They basically decided on the first night that they're done with me and they're done with Judaism and they're done with Momentum. So I am so grateful that she told me, so grateful. Because when you realize, because by the way, like 100%, I made a mistake. When you are sharing a story, it has to be 100% you. And I shared it in a way that I changed the details. My story was too complicated. I tried to make it more powerful for them.
One woman knew.
One woman on that trip. And she was a very, very negative person, happened to be a very tortured soul. Because it wasn't just this. This was just one thing.
This is like what you said to us when we went on our trip, which is the best thing ever. I said it to the girls that are coming up. Do not let one person taint your experience on this trip. And that was the best advice, because let's say we were roommates and I was like, oh my God, that person over there is so blah, blah, blah. And you think the same thing. And then the girl tainted everybody's.
Totally.
You have to, I also feel
you really need to like be your best self, like to kind of like weed out, like, what do you want to, it's so easy to get petty and critical and pull everything apart. It's so easy. We do it all the time. When we're not our best selves, everything could be negative. Like everything could look bleak, everything. So this was what was going on. And I was so grateful, but also so shaken because I was obviously upset with myself. And I could be so hard on myself. So I'm like, I just want to climb back into my bed and pull the blanket over my head and cry, because I basically blew it. I blew it. It's day 3. I have, who knows how far it spread. And I'm feeling sick to my stomach, like literally shaking, as I make my way to the hall to give a 3rd day speech, which is the hardest speech of the trip, the one on relationships, which is already so triggering because everyone's in, complicated relationships. Okay, so I get to the hall. I compose myself. First of all, what do you do in such a situation? What do you do? Okay, so talk to somebody. Okay, so I texted Adrienne Gold. I'm like, help. So she's like, oh, Eve, you've made it to the top when you could offend everybody. You're doing good. Like, leave it to Eve. Okay, so she says something that kind of like brought a little humor to it. What else do you do? Okay, so even before you get there, when you're feeling so humble, because it's such a humbling feeling to know that you hurt somebody. And of course, the only thing is to own it. I mean, you could not, but that would be really ridiculous. So I knew I'm going to own this. I'm going to own it. in front of the whole 150 women, in front of all my superiors, the whole staff was there, the executive director. I mean, there's a lot of scary people in that room, scary in my world, right? But I didn't care. But I first had to like center myself, talk to God, just find a place like, okay, I made a big mistake. I thought that would be the right way. It was not. I thought those words, the way that I would frame it would be powerful. It was not. It was a mistake. That was it. We have to see ourselves as mortals, as human beings that make mistakes. Okay, I'm just going to pause the story. I'm going to go back to the last time I did this trip because it's only my third time doing it on this caliber. Second time around, I remember calling my husband in the middle of the night, crying my eyes out because same thing, different details. I shared a story, it was a personal story about my grandmother, but it triggered someone in such a way that they also were like, I can never hear another word you say, right? It's gonna happen, right? If you're not gonna trigger anyone, you're also not gonna impact anyone.
Correct.
Like you have to be strong enough to risk if you're gonna be saying strong things. It's going to impact some people for the good, but it's also going to be too hard for some people to hear. So this is what my husband said, and thank God he always keeps me in my place. My kids keep me really humble, and my husband. So when I called him and I was so devastated, this is back in July, he said, who do you think you are? Why do you think you're so good? And you can't make a mistake, literally. Like, it was such a slap in the face. Why do you think you're so good that you can't make a mistake? Like, I want to hear this. And it was hard for me. I'm like, they're not listening. I didn't want a solution. I just wanted him to say, I'm sorry. I was not getting any sympathy from him. But it's so true. Like we have to lick our wounds when we make a mistake. And there is that time that you could mope. I didn't have any time. So I got up on the stage on the third day. And from a very, very humble, genuine, authentic place, I said, every day we have a value of the day. The first day of the trip, the value is learning and growth. But really, learning and growth is the meta message of our lives as Jews, right? I'm looking around this room. I'm talking to the right people. You guys have been learning for decades, okay? Right? Dana and Adrian, all of you, some of you guys are learners, you're students of life, right? And it doesn't end. So if we can't see every opportunity as a part of our growth process, that it's there for you to not shy away and be down on yourself or feel guilt or shame, which we're going to talk about in this chapter, but rather to feel regret. Regret is the best emotion. Okay, there's regret, shame, and guilt. Regret is the only one that makes you move forward. It's the only one that moves you to action. I don't know why we feel that guilt is so Jewish, right? We, I don't know, it's like written on my birth certificate, like guilt. I don't know, it's from my mother. It goes down generations and generations of we as Jewish moms, like to feel guilt, but the guilt and the shame, all they do is hold us in a prison. That's what they do. Regret, which I really, really felt, and I was able to bring that out on the stage, is the only thing to move you forward. So after I apologized and I explained and I shared, but really, truly, grateful that this group was able to let me know so that I could fix my ways and get up again and try better. And I asked for them to give me another chance. So that talk about, rough starts.
You need to explain
And
when
did
you
they?
speak portions, the events and these stories, maybe slightly altered. Like, you need to
There has,
you tell the stories over and over, and that makes sense that you might like alter it a little. Like,
right. So we talk about this a lot. There's six of us, right? There's Lori, Adrian, Rochi, Neely, me, and Ayana. There's six of us English speaking trip leaders. And there's one Spanish and there's one Russian, okay? And we all share each other's content. I honestly don't know whose story that was originally, because we all put our ideas into a document. We meet once a month. The whole education for this experience evolves with all of our feedback. So we already know, and I love what Adrian says. Adrian says, like, she's such a humble person, such a leader, and incredible human being.
And
She says, there's not one, yeah, great name. She says, there's not one original thought in this mind. She says everything comes from somewhere. Everything comes, and in Judaism, everything comes from the Torah. But I learned a lot about myself, a lot about being very careful, because the cornerstone, and I look at you, Susie, because you shared this once in a class, the cornerstone and the signature of God is MS, is truth. So we also need to keep that in the forefront of everything we say and do, that it's authentic. If we have a source, if we could reference, if we could give credit to where credit is due, we need to, because that is such a big part, a big component of everything. So, hi, okay, thank you for listening. This is my therapy session over
Wait a
here.
minute, did you ever get a feed? Okay, so
Oh, the
5 got
feedback.
off, one
Okay,
is in.
hold on, I just want to hear, let me just,
I just want to make sure, so this lady got data rights?
yeah.
Okay, so the thing is, there are millions of us. Something to this effect. Can 2 stories be alike? Maybe 10 stories be alike?
Right.
I
You know
mean, when you meet people, talk about events.
Right.
Oh, I was there at that
Mm.
time.
Right. I've learned, like, my takeaway is to be extra careful. Moving forward, I want to be extra careful. I want to check the source. I learned a lot from this teaching moment. And it was interesting. This was my teaching moment, and I did my work, and I apologize. But I have a feeling that the opportunity, me sharing in front of this whole group, also made people think about their lives and their work relationships and how they share. I mean, there are many different professions sitting in front of me, all types of people. And I think there was also a lesson of forgiveness and saying, I'm sorry, and humility. I mean, there was one person that said, I don't even remember what you said on the first night, but this was the greatest thing that I took away, like, to have the vulnerability to say, I'm sorry, and to get up in front of everyone like that. That was her takeaway from the trip. So it's all meant to be, everyone heard what they needed to hear. And this group forgave me, and we kept moving forward with the trip. It was not an easy group, and it was not an easy participant. And I also couldn't own, like, everything, like, the whole week was difficult for her. Everything triggered her, but I learned and took what I needed to from the experience. So basically, that's what we all need to think about, because when something happens to us in our lives, it's there for a reason. So this happened to me for a reason. I know that I could become better, but I think it also happened to many of the other people experiencing it with me, through me, for their own reasons. So that's just lesson number 1 in learning and growth. There's always going to be curveballs thrown at you. So you can either try to get out of the way, or you could kind of, like, you could take it in. You could take it in. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question though. Talking like to Neely or Adrian or any of those, isn't this commonplace that you're gonna have an event, and can't you just go into this knowing that you're gonna try to do everything not to, but like you said, you learn from it, they learn from it. These might be part of the process. I mean.
100%. It's still really hard.
process of, like,
That's why I like,
something happening.
when I discuss it with these fellow few ladies, like,
They have it
we
happen.
all say, like, that's why no one wants to do this job. Like, you need to have thick skin. Like, you need to be not afraid. I mean, I'm such a scaredy cat, and I want
so good.
everyone to be happy. I'm a people pleaser. So for someone like me to risk people being offended by my mere existence, it is really hard to get up there. But I know that, and that's what courage is. I mean, it takes a lot of courage, but courage is not that you don't have fear, it's that you have fear and you do it anyways. So the goal is so much bigger than the fear. Like, the goal is, like, being able to touch souls and lives.
Like 142, and then you got the
Thank you,
extra 8.
thank you. Well, we'll see when the evaluations come in. We'll have another session together. Yeah, Deborah.
So here's the problem that kind of goes back to what we said at the beginning of this conversation is so complicated, but it's the way that people can just cancel something.
Yeah.
We didn't even have the conversation. Right? Decided immediately. And it's kind of like we were talking about at the beginning, how those people talk, which goes into taking podcast with Adrian, she made this comment, oh, the Jews are, the number 1 people on immigrants, always backing immigrants, and then I go, wait, what? Jews are not backing immigration these days, like, we're the opposite of it in parts of the country, What are you talking about? She's like, well, liberals are, again, liberals are getting who we are, like, we are not walking the walk anymore.
Right,
Talking the
right.
walk.
We need to kind of get recentered.
Right, so what happened with remembering who we are, just like those, the beginning of your story? Of remembering who we are, and being kind to everybody. Remembering where we started.
It would be a really nice world if we were all, yeah.
On the other hand, the fact that that person, who obviously came with issues, was willing to discuss and let somebody else know what she was upset about, so that you could at least attempt to make it. There are people that, I mean, she couldn't go home because she was obviously too far away, but
She
could
tried
have-
to go home.
Huh?
She tried.
She
It was
gave
that
her-
bad. It was
she
that
did her
bad.
chance.
What?
She did go home. or
Oh, no, she tried to.
Oh, yeah. But imagine if she were and there are people like that, it's, it's none of your business, or it's personal, and you never knew, or she's just unhappy and making everybody miserable, but never let anybody else know who could let you know to even have a chance to fix it.
Right, right. I'm very
And
grateful
Peter
for the
did do a
chance.
good job, interviewing.
Jealousy.
Something
But-
clearly wrong with this person.
Yeah, it was a long
Right,
week of
because
drama with
You
this
have
group.
heard you say the same story a few times over the time I've known you, and I've never, I'm sure you've changed a name or changed, it was, February, not March,
Right.
I don't fact check that, I'm looking for the overarching.
Right.
message That you're, and so for someone to
Yeah.
not really zone in on what are we learning here,
Right,
or zone
yeah,
in on
right.
fine details, there's some,
Yeah.
bare bones to get starting
Right.
out,
Oh, yeah.
there was some.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it says a lot to take charge and own it if you're feeling, and then it gives everybody else the conversation of wow, that it just changes.
Yeah,
it changes.
well, I mean, for me, it wasn't, for me, it was what I needed to learn, right, and how I needed to get back up. So let's go into the chapter, okay? We're gonna go into this chapter of renewal. And one of the greatest gifts that the Jewish people has is the power to renew ourselves and to start again. What are some opportunities that we have as a Jewish people throughout the year? Just think about different times or things that we do that bring a new start. Any ideas? Yes.
I think that many holidays offer the opportunity for renewal.
Good.
Obviously, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
To go into your point, the blessing we say before every holiday is the Shehecheyanu.
Bring us this season.
So it's basically what that blessing says is thank you for bringing us to this moment in time. That means you only make a Shehecheyanu when it's the first time you do something that year. If you eat a new fruit, you're supposed to say a Shehecheyanu if you haven't tasted it all year. If it's your first time buying something new, Shehecheyanu, that this is a new moment in time. So I love that example. That's excellent.
Yeah, and so I think Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur,
Okay, let's talk about Yom Kippur for 1 minute, because that's almost like all the holidays offer renewal. But Yom Kippur is literally, when you walk out, it is a clean slate. You have atoned for your sins. You are baby, brand new, fresh, just starting again, new slate. So that's a great one. Yes, let's make our way through the.
There you go, Evelyn just said.
We're good for, I know, until we go home and the breakfast and all the drama and the gossip. I know. Did you have one?
Morning, we have an opportunity as well. We have in our history, I learned this last night, that our souls, we believe they left us when we slept, and that they came into us again and renewed us.
Yeah, beautiful. So literally every day of our lives it's fresh. Okay, I love that. Yes.
So if you get involved in this process that is new to me, that I've been talking and writing about, Cheshbon HaNefesh is every night you
So
get a chance.
explain what that is.
It is a process before you go to bed of reflecting on the things that you are pleased about how things went well, and which maybe it's age or whatever, that's always the easy part. And then, if my kids were little, that would not be the case. The other part would, but then you also find the things that didn't go well, that you want to fix.
Love it.
So if the last thing, and then you're supposed to say Shema, you're supposed to go to sleep. So the idea that you have sort of cleaned the slate.
I love it.
I'm happy that I did this, but I'm sorry that I wasn't
Yeah.
more something.
Like
Um,
taking an accounting of your
It's an
day.
accounting.
So you start your day with like this renewed sense of energy and belief that God is giving you another day, and you end your day also with this completion of the day, like ready to start again the next day.
Right,
I
and
love
the
that.
trick that I learned, which maybe just be for me, is that I've known about this, I've heard about it, I've attempted it. And I was always doing it mentally. And somebody handed me a notebook and I decorate whatever with a pretty pencil. It's on my nightstand. If you write it, it makes a difference.
For sure.
Yeah. Lynn talked
Love
about
it.
that a few weeks ago, and she
Oh,
doesn't
really?
she gave me
Cheshbon
that.
HaNefesh. So by the way, Cheshbon HaNefesh, this accounting for your soul, is not Jewish law. It's like you don't have to do it. It's a custom that was brought about, over 1,000 years ago with the invention of the Musar movement, which was over 1,000 years ago, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. So part of the process of really, really making change is writing it down, that Cheshbon HaNefesh. And Tony Robbins so famously says, if you write it, you invite it. Like putting something on paper to pen to paper, it makes it concrete. Also verbalizing something. It takes it from just an idea to like you put it out in the world. Now it could, grow wings and fly. Okay. Yes, Adrian.
One among many reasons that I'm grateful for the education that I'm getting as part of the this period right now, the counting of the Omer, because it's been such an awareness of the need for personal growth and different ways that you can do it, that it's been amazing.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay. Are there any other, so that's a time of year that's also like there's extra energy for renewal, for growth right now. This is like, it's an auspicious time for change. You have another one? Oh, I love that. Okay. So let's think about that. A Yurtzeit for renewal, like renewal of like remembering, like, because it could be decades and right. So doing something for that soul. I love that. Anything else? Any other Jewish Shabbat? Okay. What do you mean by that?
Because you stop, it gives you an opportunity.
It's like a cycle and like, 6 weeks you work,
You
stop,
can take a breath and think about ways that.
and then you start counting from one again, right? Sunday is Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, right? Until Shabbos. Beautiful. Okay, so we have a lot of great ideas. Good. Mikvah. I was waiting for someone to say that. It's a spiritual reset button. And for those of you that came on a mikvah tour with me, I shared that the amount of water in a mikvah, to make it a kosher mikvah, it has to be 40 se'ah, right? Which is a rabbinic Gemara term of like 200 gallons, let's say, like to make it a kosher mikvah. And the number 40 is used again and again in Judaism as a number that represents renewal, rebirth, renewal, rejuvenation. Give me some 40s that you could think about from the Torah, from all the desert, 40 years, we traveled through the desert. Flood, 40 days and 40 nights, another 40
days. That's from conception.
Good, amazing, conception of a child, right, well, there's a few over there. 40 days before conception of a child, the Talmud teaches us, and this is Kabbalah, this is really, really mystical. 40 days before you even knew you were going to conceive, a heavenly voice calls out, Bat Plani Lo Plani, which means so-and-so is destined to marry so-and-so. This is the first time we learn about the concept of Besheret, that everyone has a destined one, or as Sue's husband likes to say, right? You have a few destined ones in your life according to how you worked on yourself. So, but Sue is Bob's number one Besheret. She always lets us know. It's so cute. The cutest line ever. Okay, so yeah. Yes. So let's okay, and there are many more 40s. When I started today's class and I gave the story of Rabbi Akiva, he was 40 years old. It's not by chance that a lot of transformation happens at 40, and it's actually the age that a person could now understand the Kabbalah, because before 40, you don't have the life experience to delve into the mystical teachings of Torah.
Didn't Moses coming down?
Tonight, we're gonna be learning a little bit of Kabbalah. I think we're all over 40. Somebody gets to go watch something on Netflix.
Bringing down the Torah was.
Yeah,
Was
like
that
40
days?
40 days, 40 days, when Moses went up to get the Torah on Mount Sinai. There are many, many more 40s.
Sanhedrins.
40 weeks of pregnancy, right? Right? It's actually 40 days after conception is when the embryo takes on life form and is considered a viable pregnancy, because at day 40, it gets a heartbeat and a sex. Day 40. In fact, mystically speaking, this is like, I mean, everything. I love it when like medicine and psychology and Torah all come together. So in the Torah, we have the story of the 12 tribes and the 4 mothers that were going to birth the 12 tribes. But when Leah realized that she was expecting more than her share, because Yehuda was her 4th, and that would have been like if everyone would get equal share, like she wanted her sister to also have a boy in one of the tribes. So when she felt that she was pregnant and she said, what if I'm holding a baby boy, then my sister will get less. So she prayed, and she prayed for God to switch the sex in utero. And that's actually what happened. And her daughter Dinah was born. It was supposed to be Dan. And Dan changed to Dinah. So from that time, that biblical time, we also Jewishly know that until day 40, you could pray for the sex of the child. Very interesting.
Isn't that also the day 40 is when the baby gets sold?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure, because 40 days before conception, the soul is hovering in, like within God's heavenly triverse of souls, ready to come down. So I think the soul comes into the body in different stages. Like for a woman, the woman is born fully complete with her whole soul intact. A male is born needing to have a bris, needing to have a shalom zachar. There's more stages for the man to be a complete, full human with a soul. It comes down differently, whereas a woman is born, if she's born on a Monday or a Thursday or a Saturday, you could give her a name straight away. The male has to wait 8 days to get his Jewish name. So there's differences of how that soul and when it comes down. But what it all comes down to, this number 40, which we see again and again, I mean, there's literally a dozen times that we have this number. All of them, think about it, the flood, it's a renewal. We're starting again. We're going to give the world another chance. The Torah, we're gonna now here. I'm building a nation. It all has to do with this idea of starting again, a new person, a life. There's so much potential in a human embryo. Like everything is there. It's like magnificent from a scientific point of view to know that at day 40, every egg that the baby fetus female girl will ever have in her life is already in her by day 40. Is that mind-boggling? Not only are you carrying your daughter, you're carrying your granddaughter.
And your great-granddaughter.
And your great-granddaughter. Is that crazy? So it's so powerful to think of the power of renewal. Okay, so let's keep going. So what gets in the way of us knowing and understanding that we could walk through this world, always fixing, right? If we have 613 amazing opportunities to get connected to God, because that's what a mitzvah is. A mitzvah is a connection to your creator. So 613 opportunities, that also on the flip side means that there are 613 ways to mess up, right? And very often we focus on all the mess ups that we make and not on all the opportunities. In fact, such a great thing for you to do if you are a nerd like me. So one time I did this with a group of kids. I printed out a list of all the mitzvot. This was one of my mitzvah groups. It was in Denver, Colorado. There's 613, which is a very long number. Now, we can't do all of them today, obviously, because we don't have a temple. We don't have a king. We don't all live in Israel. We don't, you can't do them all at the same time. But let's say you could do like 200, 250. Let's say I wanted them to go through the list, all like, oh, well, I'm a Reformed Jew and I'm a this kind of Jew and I'm a that kind of Jew. And I'm like, guys, you're a Jew. Let's go through the list. How many mitzvot do you think you do? And obviously all the pushback was, well, I don't do that and I don't do that and I eat cheeseburgers and whatever it is. Who cares? Go through, and they could not believe how many mitzvot they did. There are so many different ways of connecting just by being a good, upstanding human being. That's most of the Torah. Be good. The whole Torah is summed up into one verse. What is that?
Do like the others. Like the others.
As they do unto you.
Love your fellow as yourself. Zeh kol gadol b'Torah. That's the summation of the Torah. Like, that's it. That's so much of it. Okay, yes, there's lots of details and all of that, but that's like what it's really, the underlying message is be good. Okay. So what do we do about these smudge marks on our soul? So first of all, who here thinks that you could do something in your lifetime that could taint your soul?
For sure.
You think so? Okay, does anyone agree with Doris? You do? You think so? Anyone? Yes? Okay.
You could do it on purpose or accidentally, you can insult someone so profoundly.
So let's say, and it could be even worse. Murder. Okay, terrible, terrible things.
Right.
The worst that you could think of. Do you think that person's soul is tainted?
No.
No, the murderer, the very, very awful human being. Okay.
I changed my mind.
You change your mind? Okay.
Because it says in the Shaman, already.
Good. That the soul is pure. The soul is a piece of God. It's a piece of the divine, right? We were created in the image of God. God blew a piece of him into us. That's our soul, right? Like neshama, right? It's the essence of who we are. In fact, the word for like a Hebrew name is shem. That's the root of neshama. It's the essence. It's like the goodness of someone. No one is born bad, right? No one. No. A lot of people have
Chance to kill someone like Hitler or somebody else. I think it would be a mitzvah.
Okay, so that's a really good question. And you know, when Israel put the Eichmann trial that happened in Israel, they did practice the death penalty, right? I think it had never been practiced before. Is that true?
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
And what they wanted to do, and I don't know why they didn't, is they wanted, originally they were gonna take him out on a boat. And they were gonna hang him on the boat, so it would not be on Israel.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know what the decision or why, but he was hung in the same place that Yirgun and all those boys had been hung. So I don't know what the decision, but it was a big problem.
It was a big problem, right? Okay, so I don't know what the answer is, but I'll tell you what in my understanding, what Judaism says about the soul being tainted, that you can never taint a soul. No matter what you do in your life, your soul is still pure. It's goodness. It's everything else that we put on top of it. It's all the other schmutz and layers that's not good. And there could be a lot that almost blocks the soul from shining. Okay, that's all the negative stuff. The actions that people do, but the soul is pure. And I'll give you guys an example, because before Rosh Hashanah, when we're in the month preceding in Elul and we do our work, and there's a lot of work that we want to do because we're doing teshuvah, which is repentance, which really means teshuv is to return. We're trying to return to who we really, really are. So that means, so there's this teaching that we've learned here in that time of year that says God sees us the same way before we sin and after we sin. Sinning does not impact how he sees us. Okay, and I don't have the source in front of us, but we've learned that before. Meaning, we're pure before we sin or after we sin. We still have the same goodness inside. It's just all the schmutz that we put on ourselves obviously has ramifications. Right? We're not saying that our bad actions do not have ramifications. There is a very, very strong story in the Gemara that speaks about this man, this individual, that his, I don't know, his addiction, let's say, because he was quite the addict. His addiction was prostitutes. And he went to every corner of the world to find the most promiscuous prostitutes. Like that was his addiction, right? This was a Jewish man that the Gemara talks about his life. And on the he paid a tremendous amount of money to travel very, very far to be with this certain woman. And at the end of being with her, he burped. And she said to him, just like the air came out of your mouth, so too, you are so lost. You have gone so far down. You will never be able to do teshuvah. Like you have hit rock bottom. And he had paid so much money to go and to have this experience. And he's obviously feeling so low at this moment. And this lady is giving him like musar, like rebuke, right? It's like all he needed. And at that moment of despair, I mean, this is literally, I mean, like my kids know all these stories in the Gemara. Like I'm like, they're 9. They like Shua and Shal, they tell me these stories. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this should be like rated. Some of them should be rated. But at the end of the story goes that he was feeling so low, and he realized he's hopeless. He is hopeless. There's nothing more for him to live. So he calls out to the story goes on. He cries to the moon and he cries to the sun and he cries to the mountains and he's just like searching for something. And then finally he cries up to God in pain and in regret for his life. For how low he went in his life. He had nothing meaningful in his life. And God takes his soul from him. He dies in that moment of despair. And the heaven called out this person's name, which I'm forgetting his name right now. He did, the heaven called his name saying, Rev so and so, you're allowed to enter the world to come. What the story teaches us is that at the last moment of his life, his teshuvah was accepted. That you're never too far and you're never too old and you're never too lost and you're never too low to have a moment where you turn upwards and say, I made such a big mistake. I've made so many, my whole life has been a mistake, but right now I am feeling broken and with so much remorse. And it's when it's genuine, it's accepted, right? We've seen that many times in the Torah, the story with Yishmael, who was a murderer and a rapist and a terrible human being. And he's almost dying in the desert, right? Abraham, Sarah really wanted to send him away. He goes to the desert with his mother, Hagar, and he's literally dying of thirst in the desert. And at that moment, he cries out to Hashem and Hashem saves his life. And now the angels are having a dispute with God up in heaven. They're saying, why would you save his life? Look at his past. Look at his future. It's not so simple either. Like this is not an easy character. Why would you save him? He's trouble. And God says, because right now in this moment, he's coming to me with such a genuine, just like remorse and regret. And God says these words that when I make a decision, I see where that person is right now, this moment, Ba'asher Hu Sham, where he is right now is how I'm going to judge him. So even on someone's deathbed, if someone, we're supposed to say a certain prayer, say the Shema before someone dies, right? Like that's maybe all someone needs to have a ticket into the world to come as a Jewish person. They might not have lived their life as a Jew, but in the last moment, they could still fix. You're never too far gone to fix. We believe in renewal. Yes.
I thought there was a concept though that if you really do bad,
Yeah,
that your soul will come back and try again.
so that is true, but probably for many people that don't fulfill their mission, we believe in what's it called? Reincarnation. That there are different forms that the soul will come back until it completes its mission. So I don't know if it doesn't mean that someone was terrible. It means that many of us cycle through this world in different vessels, and sometimes and this is a hard thing to share right here, because I know a lot of people in this room have experienced loss at ages that are too young for someone to be taken from this world. But sometimes that soul only came here for a very short mission. And we don't understand it. We don't know what the mission is. Imagine if we all came into this world with like a little tag coming out of our tuchus telling us what our mission is. Like, it would be so easy. But we don't know. Sometimes it's such a, one of my oldest brother, who's a very special guy, he has 8 children, thank God. And a couple years ago, they had a child that passed away only a few hours after birth. Because I don't know what it's called, but when the baby is born without a brain. What's it called?
Anencephaly.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called?
I think it's anencephaly.
Anencephaly.
Or
It's
like
a-
too small of a brain.
Yeah. So it was basically half a brain. My sister-in-law, who's a tzaddikas, she's a very righteous woman. She knew from her 21-week scan that this child was not going to live, but she didn't tell anyone. Can you imagine, for 20 more weeks? Everyone was like, we're so excited, and when's the bris going to be? And we're going to fly to Israel, and the in-laws and the parents. And she's just like, everything is good, because she didn't want to worry anyone. She didn't want to abort the baby. That was her choice. She gave birth to the baby. She held the baby for a few hours until the baby passed, and they covered the baby and they took the baby away. And this is when she called my parents. She called my parents to say, Mazel Tov, we had a baby so special that its mission was only hours in this world. That's how she told our family. Could you imagine?
Wow, what a beautiful way.
We don't know what the mission is. Maybe it was just a pregnancy of, maybe it was just one soul that needed to come down to achieve something for a few hours. Maybe it was a doctor or a nurse that needed to go through this with the family. Who knows? But that was the mission. So sometimes the mission is 80, 120 years, we hope, but sometimes it's not. So
Question, why do you always say that, the 120, where does that come from?
because Moses lived till 120, so that's the oldest we will ever live to. And I mean, unless there's like, I'm like waiting for Paula to be like, well, actually. She's my smart aleck over here. So, yeah. So, I mean, have you ever heard of someone living more than
No,
120?
but there is research that says. I mean, that they are,
Yeah.
I don't know how many in this room would like to live to be 120, but,
Willard Scott would know.
but,
Yeah.
that with medical advances, it isn't going to be unlikely.
Oh, wow. I mean, my Babi Lola, I usually talk about my Babi Gutta. My Babi Lola, her life ended with 8 years of Alzheimer's, and she died at 100. But when she was like 80, 90, and we were writing her cards, and we always wrote until 120, Babi. And I remember once she said to me, who needs that long?
That's exactly.
She was already like, I'm done. Yeah. Did you?
I love the teaching that goes along with this, that your mitzvahs stay with you, but your sins do not.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Can you just teach that lesson?
I mean,
Stay with you, but like your sins do not.
yeah, well, we the schar is merit. Someone asked me this question. Oh, Dana, this was on Sunday when we were at the spa day. You said, I was on the separate table and you had a question from your table. It was, do you get the merit for a mitzvah even if you do it begrudgingly?
Oh, right.
Right? That was your question? Yeah. So of course you do. You get the merit. Get this. You even get the merit if you intend to do a mitzvah and you don't end up doing it, you get the merit as if you've done it. So I think God wants us all to have a lot of merit and to succeed. So our mitzvot stay, and our avirot, our sins, they get washed away. That's why we have so many opportunities. Yom Kippur, making challah, by the way, is another opportunity. Every Thursday when we do the blessing, there's a beautiful blessing that says that may this atone for my sins. So not only do I don't have to wait till Yom Kippur once a year. Every single Thursday night preparing for Shabbat, I say, may this mitzvah atone for my sins and make me clean, a clean slate, like a new soul without any sin. That's what we say every time we make challah. So there are so many opportunities.
It's as if Lori could do that for me. I got you guys covered.
Okay, so, yes, yeah. Okay, let's have a question or two, and then I kind of feel like I'm on page 1 of the chapter, and I'm sorry, I really missed you guys, so I really needed to like talk.
We need it.
So, let's,
For the person, a really bad person who does not express remorse, okay, right? Does that person's soul still get accepted up into? My God, you said a prayer. Yeah, and no one says a prayer. The person who was, you know, in hospice has been a terrible
Yeah,
person, whatever,
yeah.
okay. You know, like a Hitler type person.
Yeah.
Is that person, no one says a prayer for that person.
yeah.
Well, that Hitler hurt out, that happens.
So I'm trying to think of the quote, and Susie, maybe you could look it up. Maybe you can help me with this. There is a quote that says, there's a place for every Jew in the world to come. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's part of a quote that we say in the Ani Maamin. We say it every day.
I think it's also at the beginning of Pirkei Avot, that every Jew has a place in the world.
So that's how it's different from like Catholicism, right? Because the sinners, you know, you've got heaven and hell, right?
Right.
And they also had the last right.
You got hell, you got hell.
Right.
Which was their way of saying they didn't.
Well, it's not hell, it's more like, we believe in like a kind of like a washing machine analogy, that when a body goes into the ground, soul goes up, and if the soul has some atonement to do, it goes through like a cycle. And that's why we, as people down here on this earth, we do a lot of things in merit of that soul to help elevate the soul, because the soul goes through a little bit of pain until it's settled. So it's like the 7 days, and do you have it?
She's right, it's the introduction to Pirkei Avot.
Can you read it?
Loudly.
I have a question.
Your mask.
I gotta get my reader.
I'm happy to read it if you want me to read it. Thank you. Okay, so this is, okay. One is to say the Mishnah, Kol Yisrael, all of Israel. Okay, here we go. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba. All Israel have a share in the world to come. So that is a very famous quote. And so, but that's an interesting thing. First of all, this is about Jews. I don't know. I'm assuming everyone has a portion in the world to come. I think the Olam Haba, the world to come for a Jew, will look different, might look different. But I think, you know, the end of days, we talk about how all of mankind kind of come together as one. So it's not to say like, you know, we get this like a better portion, like it's just going to be different. So, and it says here, like but one might impertinently wonder if there is unlimited room in heaven. Perhaps, okay, like there might be like overcrowded, right? If there's so many people that need it. So, so it says here, so in the book of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, with the information that God has provided every Jew with accommodations in the next world, secure in the knowledge that God is in no danger of becoming an overburdened host, the individual Jew need only concern himself with securing his own place. So I think there is a portion, but I think once again, some people need to go through more of a washing machine before getting their portion. And that's kind of where, like, you know, bad people might have a harder time, but bad people, I mean, I don't even know. Like it's a hard concept, and once again, we don't know so much about what's going to happen in the world to come. The idea of world to come is, bye guys. Okay, let me finish up with one little lesson, and if you need to go, you could go. I'll let. Okay. Let's go to page 131. Okay, so this is something that I'll close with, which is really, really powerful because I want you guys to imagine a ladder in front of you. Okay, now everyone is born into this world, into their Jewish world, let's say as an example, somewhere on that ladder. You might have been born very observant. You might have been born barely knowing you were a Jew. You might have been born non-Jewish and then had your path to Judaism, right? We all come in somewhere on this ladder of Judaism. There is really, really great people that are born like all the way at the top, like great sages and giants, and they're just born into that. So this is so important. It's not about where you're born into. It's about how far you travel. It's how many steps you climb in your life. Okay, so this is the quote. In the place where a Baal Teshuvah, which Baal Teshuvah means someone that has conquered his or her flaws, someone that has grown in his or her journey, a place where that person, that Baal Teshuvah, that person that goes back, that returns to his essence, stands, a purely righteous person is not worthy to stand. This is so huge. This is so, so incredibly powerful, because a lot of us think that we're not enough. We were born how we were born, and we're never going to get there. I'm never going to, I loved Karen Miller on Shabbos, and she's like, I became kosher when my husband turned 60, but yeah, and he turned 70. She's like, I'm not becoming Shomer Shabbos. Like, she's like, put it out there. Maybe it'll take me another 10 years. But guess what? Our sages are telling us that where someone stands, someone that has grown, a righteous person can't even hold a candle up to that person. Because it's not about where you are, it's about how far you've traveled. So that's enough for all of us. The example of that guy that was lowest, I mean, he still was able to climb at the last moment with his last breath. He still was able to acquire a place in the world to come, so much more so for all of us. It doesn't matter where we've been and where we've come from, it matters where we're going and how far we're willing to travel. So I think we'll end there. Do you have a question, Laura? Yeah. I think we'll continue with this chapter because there's so much more to do. So next week, same time, same place. Can I just show you guys something really cute? So I saw this in a cute, trendy store in Israel. And I FaceTimed with my daughter. I'm like, I need to buy it, but who should I buy it for? And she's like, the tchotchke lady, Malka. Isn't that so Malka? You know Malka? On that note, I'm going to leave this here for Malka because this weekend I'm taking my 3 little kids to a camp a few hours away. Gadi will be here, regular services. We're having an amazing lunch for Mother's Day. Like the kiddish lunch is going to be sponsored by some amazing women that are thinking of their moms that are no longer here. So it's a very special Shabbat. I'm going to be with my kids. That's my Mother's Day little thing that we're doing. We're going to go kayaking and go karting on Friday, and we're driving up to like Cassopolis, Michigan, or somewhere a few hours away. So I just want to say I'm not going to be here, but Lynn is going to be teaching. So this is her gift. You'll give it to her, and then next Tuesday regular class. Yeah, and tonight whoever wants to come, and anything else, Julie? I think that's basically it. Oh, one more really amazing announcement. One more amazing announcement for my favorite Tuesday morning people. Okay, so not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday afterwards is our main fundraising campaign for the year. You guys are like, could this be over already? How many times do we need to hear about it? But it's really, really important to us. So we're going to have a class like regular. And then when class is over, if you guys want to stay, we're going to have a buffet of lox and cream cheese and bagels. And okay, I'm sorry. Okay. She said that was French. And now that was okay, so if you guys, because I know after class everyone is running for lunch plans, so if you would like, we're going to have coffee and orange juice and some nosh. And if you guys want to stay for the hour, for 45 minutes, for half an hour, for 10 minutes, whatever you want, to make a few phone calls to help us with our campaign, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a big screen up with the numbers hopefully going up, hopefully. And it's going to be great, and we need your energy here. So if you guys want to stick around for that hour, it would be such a gift. We'll do it all together. We'll become like a call station. I'm calling from the L'chaim Center, whatever. We'll give you a script. We'll make it really easy. So that is in 2 Tuesdays from today. Thank you, guys. I don't have to. I would say the same.